because I want to show you some more advanced games than that. I want to show you some games you may have never seen at all. The counting game, the shoe game and the column game, these counting games, they're pretty universal. You can play them everywhere blackjack is offered. Sometimes they're worth more, sometimes they're worth less, but you can always find a way to play them. And they're usually pretty predictable in how much they generate for you. And also they're pretty predictable in terms of being noticed. So certain dealers, certain casinos that understand how it works will catch you more. They're well understood, they're old games. What we call advanced games, which begins with shuffle tracking and ultimately includes ace tracking, key carding, cuts techniques. Those games tend to be worth much, much more when you can play them. They tend to create situations where you can have, instead of a 1 or 2 or 3% advantage, a 30 or 40 or 90% advantage in a particular hand. But they are opportunistic. None of them can be played anywhere or anytime. You have to look at each situation and try to figure out which of these games could apply for the particular situation. And generally, more than half the time, you can do something advanced. Sometimes you can't do anything. Usually you can do something. Sometimes you can do several things. And it depends on the shuffle, it depends on the conditions. So I think I'm going to start with a simple cuts game, which generally requires that you can see a card after the shuffle. So these cards are in order, as you can see. It's 6 decks of cards lined up exactly in order. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So the way you learn how to do this game is you first learn, you try to cut an exact amount. Let's say a deck. A deck's a nice amount to try to cut. So you take these cards, you cut, and you see. Okay, so there was an ace in the back, right? See, guys? And there's a 4 here. How many cards did I cut? 54, right? Because if there was an ace here, that would be 52 cards, right? Because ace and ace, they're in order. So 53, 55. I just cut 55 cards. So what do? They're in order, right? You do the cut, you flip this around, and you do another cut. And you try to cut 52. What did I cut? Oh, and before you look, you guess. Ooh, this is thin. This isn't 52. This looks like 50. See, it's thin. This doesn't look like a deck. How do I know? You will be very good at this after just one day. 8 hours of cutting as fast as you can. Boom, boom, boom. You'll be amazed. You will know within a card. Within 2 cards, but hopefully within a card. If you have good vision, within 1 card, you will know. Try it 10 times. Cut 52 from the back. Okay, so now, remember, the goal is not to cut 52. The goal is to know how many you cut. So you aim for 52, you do the cut, and then you do your estimate. And the key thing right now, do the estimate. Is this less or more than a deck? Less. You're right, it's less. So now you can try to guess how much less. See, this would be a deck. So we're 3 cards short. Are these not in order? Yeah, okay, they are. We're 3 cards short. So it's 49. So let's say you guessed that it was 51, and Nazi is 49. So you're off by 2. Do it again. You will find that and when you practice, don't hold them like this. Hold them far. Do it fast. Well, first maybe do it slowly until you get good at that. Then, as you get good at that, hold them out. Try to do it faster. Try to make your estimate quicker. And pretty soon, I'm actually out of practice on this right now. I haven't done this in a long time. The acceptable error rate depends on exactly how you play it out. But you want to be average 1 card off is great. In other words, every time you do it, you write down 0, meaning right on. My estimate was the exact number I cut. +1, +2, +3, -1, -1, and you average that number. So if the average is around 1, you can play a very nice game. If the average is around 2, you can still play it, but it's a little more iffy. It gets to be very complicated. Yeah. It varies, if it's humid, the cards will get fatter. They'll absorb water. These are not the red cards also. Before you do this in a casino, you go to the gift shop. And you pick up the cards from their actual casino. They punch little holes in them, the used cards, because different cards are different thickness, and you could be off by 3 or 4 just by going from these cheap homemade cards to real casino cards that are fresh. These have been sitting in my bag for a year. The thickness changes a lot. Some people don't get the accuracy usually when they have bad vision, but if you have glasses, you should be fine. You should be able to usually cut within 1. Well, you try to see a card. Now, it used to be that casinos always just had the bottom card exposed. and you knew that if you cut here, the 48th card is going to be king of diamonds. They tend to cover it up now with a second cut card. But it turns out that it's very difficult to properly hide the card. And the way that you decide that you want to play this particular game is you identify dealers that are a little bit more sloppy. Okay? Dealers who just have smaller hands. Usually it's hard for them to, like the women with smaller hands, they're not going to be able to hold the cards like this. And then you practice seeing the card. So you practice like squeezing a card like this and guessing what it is based on just seeing a tiny bit of it quickly, and like that. So maybe we spend another 8 hours doing this. I'm talking about the bottom card on the shoe. Okay, after they finish the shuffle, they stack it up like this, they drop it down. Try to see the bottom card or the top card. Usually, you need a couple of people together here. So maybe the person cutting a share, you have another person here. One of you guys could usually, it takes time. Like, either you'll see it right here, or after you do the cut, let's say this is covered. Here are my cards, okay? Here's the shuffle. The shuffle is finished. They're going to try to cover this up. And then, let's say that I'm cutting to this card. So I'm going to cut here. I'm going to bring it around. They have to take this card out. They can't close it and then take it out because you can't reach it. See what I mean? So the finger has to be here. So they might take it out and then push it close. So if you're sitting at first base, you know that that's a jack of spades or a jack of clubs. And that's okay. You just have to know that it's one of those jacks. Right? And see, all he saw was this little top of the jack. But it's a jack. It's not anything else. Because you know that. And if you don't know that, just squeeze the cards from every possible angle until they get very familiar. So that's one place to see it. You can also see it in this corner from this way. You can also see it when they're just sloppy. And they usually are sloppy. I mean, I'm not saying, maybe half the time you can find a dealer that will show it consistently. If a dealer only shows you a card 1 out of 10 times, it's not worth it. And some dealers will never show it at all. They'll be very meticulous, precise, and accurate. But it turns out that those dealers, they have other techniques for it that work really, really well. Usually it's bad for the casino to have a very meticulous dealer. If a dealer follows procedures very precisely, there are many ways to attack. The shuffle tracking becomes very effective. Cuts are effective when shuffle tracking is not, when the dealer is a little sloppy and messy. So you see the card. And you can also see the top card, right? It could be up here. Like, as they're stacking it up, one card jumps out a little bit. If nothing else works, you can pass the cut. You get the cut card, you can actually pass it to him, who's your teammate. You say, I don't want to cut you cut. So I go in here. See what just happened? Hopefully you just saw at least one card. Because, how do I could have picked it up. I could have, but see, I'm using one hand to, it's hard. I could pick it up with two hands, have a very precise. The chances are that something will slip out for at least a second. And mostly, like the dealers, whoever, the floor people won't even realize anything's exposed. Because it's only, your eyes have to already be on this spot for you to see. Because it was just a fraction of a second. If you're looking here, by the time you realize you exposed it, you look here, it's gone. But if you're already looking at the right corner, and you anticipate the way in which he'll expose the card, you're probably going to see that there's a 4 hearts here, or whatever. So what do you do with it? Well, it depends what the card is. The easiest one is an ace. And also probably the only one that the casinos allow you to understand what the heck you're doing is if there's an ace. So it might be a little bit careful because it's a little bit more obvious as well. But only if they know, if they've seen that there's an ace there as well. It could be up here, it could be down here, it doesn't matter. So let's try to play it. What are we going to try to do with this, first of all? We're going to give it to ourselves, right? That's one of our cards. Question is, how much is that worth? You've learned that when you have a true of 4 minus 1, it's like a 1.5% advantage. So if you're going to bet you have 3 units, $300, 1.5% of $300 on one hand, $4.50. So when you get that true or false situation, it's going to happen, every half an hour, every hour, every 2 hours you're going to get that. You're going to expect in each one of those $300 bets to make $4.50, and hopefully it'll add up to $100 an hour or something. But what if you know that you have an ace coming? What is your percent advantage? That's right. So, on the hand that's going to get an ace, your expectation is 51% of your bet. Not 1.5%, not, 51%. It's a whole other ballgame. You can play an entire shoe, varying your bet, betting up to $1,000 a hand, and you're still not going to make anywhere near the amount you make by one time putting out table max, 2,000, or whatever the max is, on and getting an ace. That's one of your two cards. Okay? So you're not going to win every time. You might still get an ace 4, but on average, 50% of the money that you bet in that hand is your expectation. And you get to the long term very quickly. To test it, you can test it yourself. You can just keep an ace here and just deal cards and play blackjack, but always keep the ace. And write down what you win. You'll find that after like half an hour, you're going to be ahead by very close to half of the total number of bets. It doesn't take a million hands to get to the long term. It's very quick. It converges very quick. Anyway, so let's try to play this ace. Let's say that we have these cards, and we saw that there's an ace in the bottom, and we did a cut. And we try to cut 52. And hopefully we're actually going to be accurate, right? But here we're not going to be accurate because we couldn't calibrate. We're not, like I said, the cards, whatever. But we're still going to try to play it and see what happens. So I guess we can make an estimate. We can say, how many is that? Is that more than 52?
No, more.
Okay, so let's say 54. Whatever, we don't know. Let's just try to play it. And what happens, happens. We'll play it as 54. Or maybe it's more, I don't know. This one could be 56. Let's try 56. Okay? Ace of diamonds. So how do you do it? What do you do? Well, you want to have at least two people. And hopefully you can play 3 hands each. And if you can only play 2 hands each, you probably want 3 people doing this together. They don't all have to know exactly what's going on, but you do need the bodies at the table. You don't really want random people at your table here. You kind of want to have your own table. You can have one random person and hope you can still get the ace. You're going to be more likely to get it if you're by yourself. So we can go to, let's say, 6 spots, at whatever minimum you're comfortable playing. And now you say they're going to burn some. If they burn cards, you just count it. So we said it's 56, right? So now it's 55. If they burn 3 cards, it's going to be 53. Okay. You can see the burn cards, but it doesn't affect it. If you're going to count, you can ask to see it just to have your count be a little more accurate. Getting the count of that extra burn card is like increasing the penetration by 1 card. Right? It's the same thing. That's only 1 card, but you might as well grab it. Get all the info you can. And then you just play. But one of you might be counting, and the second person is counting down. The countdown is 55. The count is -1 because it's an ace. The countdown is 55. I wouldn't recommend doing both. Like, just since there's 2 of you anyway, you might as well, not get confused and each do a separate thing. Okay, so let's play 6 hands. So now what's the countdown now? It was 55. And what do you subtract? You subtract, 6 hands plus the dealer, 7 hands, 14. You subtract 14 for 6 hands. So 41. So you have 41 right now. And now you play basic. 40, right? 39, 38, 37. Don't count this one because you already counted it. 36, 35. Okay? So just keep doing it. Same thing, 6 hands. And still play basic. So 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, right? 16, 15, 14. Okay? So now what do? Now you probably only play 3 hands. Or 4 hands. 3 or 4 hands. You want to control. See, what you're doing now is you're manipulating the entire outcome. You're steering the card. So all these hands, the purpose of these hands is to control what happens. So you go to 4 hands, and now you really, on this round, hopefully some of these hands are really small bets. Okay? So what's really effective is if it's like the big player and his girlfriend at the table, for instance. So the girlfriend might reach into the same stack, and she'll play below the minimum. They'll almost always let the girlfriend of a big player play below. Like if you're playing above the minimum, you're playing 500 minimum. So it's a $100 minimum table. You're going to play 500 on one hand, and she's going to play 325 with your money, and they're not going to complain because they'll see that it's all your money, and you're playing 500, and they like you. So this is how you're probably going to actually play this. Okay? I would not recommend pretending that you don't know each other and doing this game, coordinating, secretly signaling. That would be you have to be a very good actor to get away with that. It would be pretty blatant. We could try it. We've done it. But much easier is to just be obviously together. And, and the reason this has to be small is because you might have to start playing badly in this round. Okay? Because the most important thing is to get the ace where you want it. Okay? So, see, this is what I mean. You're going to double this. So now the number is only 3. So I'm almost tempted to stand the rest of these hands. You see what I'm saying? Maybe you double one more. If you double one more, there's a good chance you're going to pull the ace out. See what I'm saying? So if it's $100, you probably double this. And if it comes out, it comes out. But you're betting 500, you're going to bet 5,000 in the next round, if you can do it. So if you can get away with it, if you don't think it's going to look too weird, stand all these hands. Surrender this, whatever. 15, well, let's just say, 19, whatever. Depends how it goes. So what's the number now? It was 4, 3, 2, 1. So the very next card is expected to be the ace. You sort of aim it so the ace is above here. You can be, if it came out early, like, if you got this one early, if it was 55 cards, it would come out right here. And it might have come out, I just dealt it, so it didn't, but it could have come out here, and then it's over. Mm-hmm. What happened? Well, we made a little basic mistake on a $25 bet. We put out 500 for no reason. What's the penalty? Well, 0.5% of this, 20% of this, $25, which is about the same as whatever. We lost $50.
Try and get it in the middle.
We do it again. We're not going to get it every time. Sometimes it's going to come out early. Sometimes you're going to think you cut 56 and you actually cut 53 and it's early. But right now, if it's 56, it's going to be the very next card. So this is $5,000. Okay? You see? This is the $5,000. This here, the next one, another $5,000. Because it could be, 56 or 57. And it could even be 58. It could be, hold on, no, it could be 50. Could it be 58? You ask yourself, well, I did this cut. Is there any way it could be 58? Yeah, I've been off by 2 before. In a casino, it was kind of, fast. It could be 58. But there's no way it could be 63. It's impossible, because you're pretty good at this, okay? So that's why your girlfriend has to play 3 hands, okay? Because in case you're wrong and it's 59 or 60, it doesn't go to the dealer, it goes to her. Anyway, so there it is. Let's see. So what happened? You put out 3 hands. Here you took your 0.5% or your 1% penalty for putting it out for no reason. You take variance. But here you just made 50%. You made a couple of $1,000, just like that. You might lose this hand. And in fact, this is not a positive hand, and they say against the 10. But the number of times, obviously you're going to get blackjacks 4 or 13 times. You could be 1 off, you could be 2 off, you make lots of money. If you're 1 early, in this case, you don't make anything. And the important thing is that even if you're 2 or 3 late, it doesn't go to the dealer. Okay? Because if it goes to the dealer, it's 37% of each one of these hands. It's kind of a lot. In expectation. Okay? It's ace, 10, it's a hit, 16 against the 10, well, depending on the count. For the 16 against the 10, if there's no 5s on the table, it's actually always okay to hit the hand. Even if the count is positive and the strategist has to stand, it's only play like that, actually. For every other play, you have to go with the count, but for 16 against the 10, it's so close, and the 5s are so critical, that just the presence of 5s on a full table of 6 hands is more indicative than the count is for how to play the hand. So it's just a little rule that you can have. You hit a 16 against the 10, simply hoping for a 5. Anyway, so I don't know if you guys want to play all these hands out, but whatever. It doesn't matter. You just have to believe that by virtue of simply giving this ace, you've generated the 50% right there. It's true, and what actually happens is going to vary hand to hand, but you don't have to do 1 million of these. You do a few hundred of these over the next year, and you're going to win close to 50% of the total amount you bet on each one. When you have an opportunity to catch an ace, you don't bet $100. You bet a lot. You bet a quarter of everything you have on you, pretty much. Whatever you have in your pocket, you put out a quarter of that for the ace, or a third even. If it's over a few hands, you put out maybe even half. On 3 hands, the total could be up to half of what you have. This isn't something you can do all the time. This isn't accounting where you're doing it and doing it and doing it.
Right.
It might only happen once, because particular casino, it might be months before you do the same thing again.
True.
So,
and the fact that you do it once and you hit it, you should be so lucky. It can't be really.
If you think you're getting heat, you have to be aware of what they think. Do they think you got lucky? Do they think you got crazy? Mm-hmm. Or do they think that you're up to something nefarious and tricky that they don't understand? If you're getting real heat, you should leave. You should leave and come back later. The way heat works is until it goes up, it rises. Heat tends to rise. Okay, the more they watch you, the more they think you're doing something, and then watch you more. It's hard to dispel heat with camouflage. It doesn't work. The best way to dispel heat is by giving him some time off. Because if the heat hasn't risen to a critical level, then every time you leave, it falls to 0. So specifically, you're on a shift, okay? Someone up there, or usually the pit boss, occasionally somebody upstairs. Upstairs, people don't usually initiate the action. They just do what they're told, usually, unless it's really blatant. Let's say the shift manager came over and they're watching you, but they haven't figured you out by any means. They just, they're really watching you. This is the time to leave. You really want to leave soon. Because if you stay, they'll figure you out. And if they figure you out, then they're going to make some decision. And it's a corporation. They have some decision process, Someone has to agree, someone has to sign off, because they take a risk. If they borrow you incorrectly, they lose money. But once they really reach a definite decision, you're pretty toast. Because your name is in the computer, and then they're all looking for you, and they might even send a fax out to other casinos or to the Griffin Detective Agency if you're really notorious. So you want to actually get out of there before that happens. While they're still talking about it, while you're getting the heat and they're really getting more and more suspicious, you just disappear. So what happens? They're not really going to fill out this long report. When they're not sure themselves what the conclusion is, they're not even going to tell people another shift. They might mention that, if you're still there when the shift is changing, they'll tell the people coming on that, hey, we're watching this guy, you got to take a look at this guy. But if you're gone, if you leave, they'll probably the whole process will be suspended until you return. They'll wait for you to come back so they can keep watching you. And if you don't come back on their shift, it's pretty much over. You come back on another shift, you have a clean slate. If you can leave the shift before they make a notation, before they make a decision, the trick is to be aware that they are suspicious. They should not be suspicious at all. They should love you. They should know you and love you and not even watch you. And if they're watching you, at first they'll watch you a little because they don't know you. But once they know you, if they start watching you and they start being suspicious, if you leave very quickly, you can usually come back 2 hours later when the shift changes, or whatever, 6 hours later, and you're totally fine. But it would be a mistake to keep playing under the heat. They link your results together, which is why it's really important to camouflage your results. They're very, very bad at figuring out how much you won or lost. You're a black player playing black chips at a black table. If you're playing black chips at a green table, they're going to know exactly how much you won and lost. Because they'll look at the rack and they'll immediately know how much you won and lost. But if there's 6 other people playing the same colored chips as you, it's very hard for them to know. They have to actually look at how much you have in front of you, and you can actually squirrel them away. You can pick some chips up, you can put them back down, you can put some in your pockets. And now they look at the table, and they have to take a guess. They look at the rack, they see that there's some black chips missing, but they don't know who's got them. Right. And people leave. If you're aware of this process, you can easily misrepresent your win. And you don't have to do it at every table. If every once in a while you turn a win into a loss, overall that's going to add up and they're going to think you're a losing player. And it's absolutely necessary. If you're going to play a long time in the same casino. Unfortunately for us, we were so well known after a while, we never got that far. You get thrown out before this even happened. But earlier on, when you have a better reputation, and hopefully you can maintain it for a long time, you really want them to think that you lose. You get more comps and you get less heat. And hopefully you get to this point that you're very well known, that everyone upstairs knows exactly who you are, and they just don't watch. They will not. They can't. I mean, they have to decide who to watch and what to do, and there's a psychology to it. And there's also they make commitments internally. They don't want to look like fools. You see, once they've made it clear to their coworkers that they think that you are just a dumb gambler, they would have to admit a mistake in order to start investigating you. They would have to already look bad, right? And they don't want to look bad. There's a part of them that wants to be the expert, and so they end up agreeing. So consensus, like groupthink, consensus emerges with very little actual information. And you influence it by playing to stereotypes more than anything else. You have a story, you talk. Maybe you don't tell them directly, but you talk to other players, you let people overhear who you are, why do you have this kind of money, how often you come to Vegas, and you just let them paint you into some kind of picture. So anyway, that's a kind of a tangent. Let's go back to doing some cuts. So you saw what we did for an ace. We played several rounds. On the third round or so, we varied the number of hands such that the ace, such that after all the hit cards, there'd still be a couple of cards before the ace. And then we changed the strategy on the hand to make sure that the ace doesn't come early. That's how you play it. So, what about if there's a 10? What do you guys think you should do if you see, like I just saw that the top card here is a jack of spades, see? Jack of spades up top. We had a glimpse of the jack of spades. It's actually kind of confusing. It turns out that if you were to give a 10 to yourself, that's also a very nice situation. It's worth 13% of your bet. Okay, and that's in the handout somewhere, but you can, jot it down anyway. About 13% of your bet, which is still, you think about it, it's like having a count of 26. True.
Right, exactly.
Well, 27 to be exact, because there's an offset. Or 28 or whatever. I mean, it's a huge, wonderful thing, but it's 13% of your bet. You might still bet a lot of money for it. You might bet like 25 units. It's probably still be table max, unless you have a fairly small bankroll and the max is very high. You'd still bet a couple of $1,000. But it turns out that there's another way to play the 10, where instead of being worth 1/4 of what an ace is worth, it's actually worth more. It's worth more than an ace. And that's what I'm going to show you. We call it the JP tense based on this character, who was Mr. M in the History Channel movie. His name was JP, and we call him JP tense. So let's do it. Let's do a cut. So I'm going to cut from the back. We saw the top card. Let's say we can't see the bottom card here. Pretend there's another card covering it. But we saw the top card, and we're going to try to do a cut. I don't know. Again, we're not super prepared, but this doesn't require total precision either. Let's say it's 52. Let's say it's 53. Now, it was the top card. The jack of spades was the top card, so we have to add one. Okay, because there's going to be one extra card. Okay, so we're saying 53, 54. So let's call it 54, maybe a little less. So we're going to burn a card. Call it 53, maybe a little less. You and your girlfriend, or your imaginary girlfriend or buddy or whatever, have to switch seats here. And in fact, since there's a lot more tens in a suit than aces, the person betting the money is going to sit on third base. And the helper spotter person betting less is going to sit on first, normally. And only for the aces do you swap around. Okay? So, we can start with about 5 hands here. Again, you're going to play one of, as little as you can get away with, probably. This person has to put out some reasonably sized chips just for act. Maybe not, maybe it's a black. Maybe it's 2 hands of black and 3 hands of green, something like that. It's going to look something like that. So 53 minus how much? 5 hands? 12.
6.
I played 5 hands. Okay? Plus the dealer makes 6. So whenever you have 5 hands, the total number of cards that come out with the dealer is 12. Okay? So 53 minus 12, 41. So we have 41, play basic. 40, nice hit. Stand, right? Another nice hit, 39. 38. 37. Okay. So now, what do we want to do here? Let's see. I think we're going to go 6 hands now. Okay. We're going to try the 6 hands. That's going to take us to 23. And we're going to try to eat a few cards. So the alternative right now would be to go 2 hands or 3 hands and play the next round. Okay. So it's going to go to 23, correct? 37 minus 14 is 23. And you want to eat some cards here. How many do you want to eat? Well, you really want to take it down to, you want to take at least like 4 or so. And that's okay, because you can do that pretty easily here. 23, let's play basic here. 22, 21. Now you got to start wondering, am I going to eat too many? You see what I'm saying? So you probably still play basic here, I would say. It's a judgment call, you know. 20, and you just get good at it by doing it a lot. But the goal is to line it up just so. It's 20, right? 19. So, you know, if this is not too much money relative to how much you're going to bet on the money round, you probably stand here. If it is a big, if you're only going to bet 500 in the money round, it's 100, you'll not make this mistake because it would be too costly a penalty to take on the speculation of helping the, you know, you only want to take so much of a penalty just to help a line of cards, because you can always just skip this card and do it next time. But let's say, you know, I'm going to stand this 19, because 19 or less, 18 or less. Okay, 18 or less. That's kind of where I want it. If I took an extra card here, you know, and he happened to take a card here, I would sort of blow this opportunity.
Why that?
I'll show you in the next round. This is the money round. So you want to play 3 small and 3 big. 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 Okay. So are you guys starting to sort of understand what we're doing with this Jack of Spades? No. No, we don't. The number is 17 and 18. We're going to take 14 cards out. What are we trying to do with this 10? Break it. Because we want to help all the hands on one of them. That's where the big advantage comes from. The power of this game, with the tens, is that you actually have 2 opportunities to make money. One opportunity is to bust a dealer, but the other major opportunity is, because you have 3 spots here, there's about a 50% chance that one of these hands is going to be a doubleable hand. You know, you have a pretty decent chance of catching an 11, a 10 on one of these hands, in which case you have the flexibility to play these cards differently and no longer aim the card to bust the dealer, but to aim the card for the double down. And that's why the 10s end up being worth even more than aces, simply because you have multiple opportunities to score. And sometimes the opportunities line up such that, like often they line up such that you can be off on your cut, and no matter where you go, you make money. Not in this case, unfortunately, but if like you had a 2 here, and an 11 here, and an 11 here or something, you know, you could aim it here, you could be 1 off, you could get it here, you can be 1 off, you can bust a dealer. With a 2 or 3, the second hit card is worth just as much, if not more, as the first, so there's a lot more options. When the dealer has a 10, it's actually a great opportunity, because he doesn't always need a hit card, but when he needs one, you're 100% to bust. So it's actually worth 25 to 30%. And this one's worth a little less because it's a pretty good hand already. In terms of delta, and the difference between doing nothing and busting a dealer, you know, and giving him an opportunity to bust. So like this 12 that you're going to stand now, and whatever this maybe turns into a 17, it's going to be worth that much more. Even if you don't end up busting him, just by steering this as the next card, it's like the exact percentage is in the handout. It depends on how high the total is. But especially for the poor hands, for the stiffs, and for the stiffs which you no longer hit, now it's correct to stand the stiffs because of the extra chance of the dealer busting. They tend to be worth about 25 to 30% each. So you can easily see how you can make 100% on the play. So let's start playing it out. The number is 4 or 3, right? So we really want to say we're going to take 1 here. And the big danger in this particular situation is that you're going to put the 10 right here. And, you know, that's unfortunate. It's not the way this is laid out. You have to take that risk. The best option in this case, believe it or not, is actually to aim it here. And if you're 1 early, take the penalty. because the bonus is bigger than the penalty, and you're more likely to be right on and to be one early. Even if it's very flat, minus 2 plus 2 has to drop off statistically. Minus 1 plus 1 might be pretty flat with 0, but still you're going to be a little more likely to be on your estimate than to be one off. So there's going to be less than a 33% chance that you're going to put it here. Maybe it's going to be a 25% chance or a 20% chance you put it here. And then you take a penalty, and that's that. It's going to add up on average to be worth 30, 40% of it with one bet. Many times it'll be 120% of a bet or more. But here, I would say you try to aim it here. And remember, there's also a chance that you'll catch a 4. And then you're going to hit it again, and that's going to be a very nice play. Okay? So, another thing to keep in mind, though, that it's 3 or 4. So you don't want it to be like 3 goes here, 4 goes here. So maybe you want to put the 4 here. See what I mean? In other words, I'm sorry, the 3 here. So put the estimate was either 3 cards left or 4 cards left. So put the third card. If it's 3, make it be the first hit card. If it's 4, the second hit card is actually pretty good too. It helps the 19. It'll probably help this hand. It probably, it's no longer good to stand as 12 with the 10 as a second hit card, but it's not a huge penalty. So I would probably play it like that. Play it like it's just 3. So go 2, and doubling is the correct play with the extra possibility of busting the dealer. And I wouldn't surrender, actually, because there's a good chance you're going to bust the dealer. Surrendering is just stand. Standing is better than surrendering. So put the 1 here, and now the 0 is going to go here. Kaboom. Well, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. But it worked out all right. I mean, you took a penalty in expectation by staying these 12s. Why did you take a penalty? Because you didn't. This is not the cut to cut. This is a different card. We cut a jack of spades. So you basically, without controlling this card, you stood a 12 against a 10. You're lucky that he busted, but that was just random luck. So you take a penalty there, and there's a chart that can tell you how much the penalty is for hitting a 12 against a 10. And, it's a substantial penalty. But if the next card is the jack, and so what do you do now, actually? The round's over, but the jack's still coming. So probably bet 2, maybe bet 3. There it is. Okay? Now, if the jack came here, then this penalty will be very small, because you still landed as a second hit card. And on average, the second hit card with a 10 up is still worth it, something substantial. You see what I'm saying? You steered a 10 as a second hit card with a 10 up. He could have had a 2 here. He could have had a 2 and a 3, and then he needed 2 hit cards. And you might have still busted him. But because you put it here as a third hit card, with a 10 up, a third hit card is worth nothing. Almost worth like 1% more than nothing. So you take the full penalty for the 12. So you actually lost expectation on this play. You made 13% here, and I think these penalties look in the order of 10% each. So you actually lost on this particular time. But the great majority of the time you do this 10 cuts you end up making. And we'll do a few more, so you'll see. What's cheating, right? Cheating is changing the outcome of the game. But here, you're doing everything that you're allowed to do. If, for instance, you had the dealer secretly signaling you what kind of card he had, that would be cheating. But here, the casino allows you to cut the cards. They give you the cut card. My understanding is that if you're using information that's given to everyone at the table, you're sitting in a spot, you're playing the game, the dealer is sloppy, he shows you the card. You're allowed to cut however many you want to cut. It's legitimate, in my opinion. I'm not an attorney. So, Actually, this is good. Let me talk a little bit about encouraging dealer errors. You can ask about cheating as well, but again, I think it's completely legitimate. If the dealers don't know how they're doing, you can make a lot of money in things like an opening day. Mohegan Sun, they just have to hire lots of people. And a lot of these people just went to dealer school.
Right.
I don't know. They probably partied pretty hard every night at dealer school because these guys couldn't deal, And the floor people didn't know much, The floor people were people who were dealers in the past and have never been floor people. And so the procedures were very loose. And we just, at some point, we stopped counting. And we started betting table max all the time. Because we realized that the number of mistakes they were making, we would catch the mistakes against us. And they would just make lots of errors. They couldn't you bet table max was 2,000, but we would bet like 1950, and they could. How much does a blackjack pay in 1950? I mean, there's no way they could have figured this out correctly. I mean, they just can't. They just simply cannot. So we would bet 1950, and if they played too little, and half the time, 2/3 of the time they would underpay, and we would always catch and say, no, you paid me wrong, and then 1/3 of the time they would overpay, and it would add up to a lot of money, because they were inexperienced, and they made other mistakes, like for example, misdeals. They would constantly deal wrong, let's say this person just got paid, but they haven't put another bet out or whatever. They would deal, and they would deal to the spot, or you just pulled it back in the last minute, and so, what do you do now? Actually, let them keep dealing. Let them keep going until they catch their mistake. That's the first thing you should do. But let's say they keep going. Let's say, oops, they're like, floor. I guess should I just burn this card? This is where you pipe up, okay? And, if it's against the 2, well, you got to know. 9 against the 2, do you want it? 4 against the 2. And so if you like it, then you tell them to burn a card. And if you don't like it, then you insist that they let you out of the hand. And they will, in fact. If they make any kind of mistake, even though theoretically the mistake doesn't affect you, if they have any kind of procedural error, usually they have to let you have the opportunity to get out of the hand.
Yeah, but generally they never make something to favor you.
Yeah, but they will, if they did something wrong already, and you say, you screwed up, this was supposed to be my card, it's all wrong, move the card, just let me out of here. They will let you out.
Yeah.
At the Mohegan Sun on opening day, we were a little bit more aggressive than that. This happened, they frequently misdealt, they frequently did some error, some procedural mistake, and you would say, well, sorry, that's a mistake, you got to pay the table. Pay the table!
And they did.
Because you screwed up, I would have won, maybe pay the table. Saying that does not make them like you, because you're messing with them, right? They have procedure, you're making them look like a fool, right?
Yeah.
They don't like you. But does it help or hurt your act? Does it help you act? Does it make them think that you're a card counter? I don't think so.
They don't want to lose me.
It makes them think that you're a jerk, but that's okay in this case. Within limits, you might.
Lose for sure. And they say just pay.
Yeah. So I've done similar things. You have to be reasonable, I think. But you can use your discretion. But yeah, encouraging dealer mistakes is good. Betting odd amounts. But if you're going to bet odd amounts, then know how much blackjack pays, know how much surrender pays. Memorize a few odd amounts within your betting range, and only bet those exact odd amounts. Because it's very hard to actually calculate. And when you get a mispay, if you're not prepared, you're going to hesitate. You're going to know that the amount is wrong, but you won't know if it's too high or too low. You have to recount it. Anytime you hesitate, without a doubt, they will double check too. When the floorman decides, the floorman's supposed to check every payoff, right? They're supposed to check every odd payout. When you color up, they're supposed to check. What they're usually looking for is whether anyone is unsure. They can see the dealer is not sure, they can see you're not sure, they're going to actually check everything. If everyone looks totally sure and it's smooth, they're going to pretend like they check, but they'll get lazy and they'll say, yeah, whatever. So if you want to get overpaid, you will not get overpaid unless you can take the money with confidence. You have to know right away. You have to be expecting a certain number of chips. You have to very quickly count the chips, know that it's too much, and take the chips, and smile. It has to be like that. So you won't get the payoff errors unless you're very good at knowing how much you're supposed to have been paid. You have to be that much better than the dealer, and the dealer does it all day long. But the dealer does not usually pay people who are betting, $122 each hand every time, or some odd amount like that. I think we're going to do one more 10 cut, because the thing about cuts is that the 10s happen a lot more often than anything else. And they also, in some ways, the most powerful and the least dangerous to play. So when you guys start playing cuts, you'll play the aces when you get them, but you won't get them that often. So probably 10s are the things you'll play first. So let's do one more 10, and then I'll show you just one small card, because the small cards are trickier. They're trickier. You kind of need 3 people at the table together, and it's not as often as you're going to get a chance to do it. So, I don't know, let's try, if you can see 2 cards. So actually you have a glimpse, like that, okay? So I'll try cutting it again. So I'll say 51. And now what do you see? A diamonds, queen of spades.
Queen and diamond.
So I'm going to say 51 to the queen of diamonds, 52 to the queen of spades. All right? Just for fun. Let's see what happens. Yeah, we'll try one of these guys. So 50 to the first queen. 5 spots. 38 to the first queen. So they'll do this, they'll do that. Let's say surrender. 35 to the first queen. $23, right? And you got to take a couple extra hits here. So you're going to hit this 14 even though it's wrong. Just to line it up. Small penalty again. $25. 22. Hit one more time. And then double this thing. 21. Stand these, double, 20. You could have stood that and then hit this twice, but you're actually better off doubling it, because it's a nice double. And this is a bigger bet. 19, 18. As you can see, like 80% of the time I get it to 17 and 18 where I want it. Sometimes you'll be off and you'll have to call it off, but usually you can get it. So 3 and 3 now. Okay, so what do? How do you think? First, you look at this, you look at these. You're looking for 11s, right? Not a lot of those. Well, too bad. You're hoping for an 11 here, especially, so you can keep hitting until you see the first queen and then 21 on the second one. That's how you get like 160, 170% delta by turning an 11, which is already positive, into a double 21, which is like 95%, but doubled, it's 180, minus the original, let's say, plus 40, you get 140% play. So here...
So we're 4 away from the queen?
Yeah, from the first queen. Well, what are you going to do? You got to hit this. You'll probably, you could double it. It's not a great double. It's worth a little bit. I think 19 against the 9 is certainly positive. So you might as well double it. And hopefully, if you give the dealer the second queen as a hit card, now it's a very powerful double. You see it doubling a 9 against a 9 into a 19, it's good. If you don't put a 10 on it, it's a bad double. But if you end up then putting a 10 as a hit card, it's all good to double everything almost. So 4. So you're going to have 3. So I almost want to put the first queen here. You see what I'm saying? Instead of aiming the first queen for here, I would probably aim the first queen for here, just because I don't want to have them be really late and miss out on the whole opportunity. I'm going to stand the 13 and the 16, so if they're very late, I'll take penalties for standing them. So I want to make sure and get it. So I'll aim the first one here to make it more likely that even if it's one late, it's going to go here. And it'll be like first and second hit card. And if it's here, it's pretty good. You don't want the second queen to go here particularly. You really want the first one. But so that's what you aim for. So 4, so 3, 2, 1, double, 0. Guess what? We were right on. We were right on again. See, so even though I'm not in practice, I promise I did not warm up to this at all. Haven't really played this in years. I do a seminar once every few months, and it's the only practice I get. As you can see, you're still getting a lot of zeros. So it's a pretty playable game if you can see that back card. And at first, you go to the casino, you'll say, I can never see that back card. They're covering it really well. I can never see it. Keep looking, and keep looking, and keep looking, and before you know it, you'll find situations where you see it half the time or more. This is an important point. When I say that giving the 10 as a first hit card, meaning 10H1. That's what we call it. So creating a 9 plus 10H1. That's the situation. So 9 up. The whole card is unknown, random card. 9 plus 10H1. I say that's worth 30% of this hand, 50% of this doubled hand, and 30% of this hand. So I'm saying it's worth 110% altogether. Okay? It's worth 110% across all possible whole cards. So counting the fact that he might have a 19, in which case it's actually worth nothing, it's because when he has this, it's how much is it worth then? Well, it's obviously worth, this goes from a minus 50% hand to a plus 100%. So 150% here, minus something, it's worth like 400%. You see what I'm saying? You're going from negative to guaranteed wins to 100%. The 110% is actually averaging between this even better situation and the situation where it ends up being worth nothing. So it's worth that much. It's worth 30% per hand, average over whether he needs it or not. And it's great because the casino does not understand. The casino will not understand. Even if they saw everything you did, they're like, huh? Especially if you end up with a 10 here, and then this 10 comes here, they will never come to think that this 10 helped you in the previous round, statistically. But in fact it did, because you just multiply it out. Sometimes you won't need it. When you need it, it's a guaranteed bust. Well, except when he has a 2. When he has a 2, it actually hurts you with a 9, which is why they're worth more with a 10 than with a 9. If you're off by 3 or 4, then you're going to lose a lot of money. Because if you think that you're going to be on and then you're off, it's very bad. If you know you might be off by 2, you can still make money, but you have to play more conservatively. You have to think, well, I know I can be off by 2, so I'm not going to go Stanley. I'm going to be more conservative. But it becomes very complicated. Playing this is just intellectually impossibly difficult if your accuracy is weak. You have to consider too many possibilities. So there's a 15% chance I'm off by 3, in which case I have this kind of, it just gets too complicated. If you know you're within 1, almost all the time, it's an easy game to play. I use this extensively. Right? Extensively. I usually use it when there's no back card. When there's a back card, you're not going to, probably 90% of the time you're going to play blackjack in your life, you're not going to do this. It's opportunistic. You wait. When you see the right opportunity, when you find the dealer, and if you're not good at looking for the back card, you'll never see the opportunity. So first you have to train yourself so that you're always looking for it. If you're always looking for it, then every once in a while you'll find a dealer that shows it to you. And then you just do it with that dealer. You come back, you find out when they work, you talk to them, where are you from? This shift sucks, man, what are your hours tomorrow? And you come back with a friend, you're probably playing alone. But then you come back, you practice. You didn't even practice cuts in months. But now you found this dealer. You know when they're working. You find a time when it's not crowded. You get the graveyard shift. You ask them to raise the maximum, so you get the table to yourself. And then you ask them to let your buddy bet below the max or whatever. You create a situation. You control the game. Okay? And then you write your ticket. Yeah. And when you get it all set up, and you can see the back card like 80% of the time with that dealer, then you do like a few hours of this. Hopefully you do pretty well. And that night, you buy the 6 decks of recent casino discarded cards, and you get your accuracy as high as it's going to go. And it doesn't take a long time, just a few hours. You'll get it pretty high. Keep them sorted and keep cutting. And you have to calibrate yourself. When you first do a cut in the casino, don't put out $2,000. Just count it down and see how far off you are a couple of times. So you guys might find that you're able to cut the shoe in half very precisely. I couldn't personally do it very well, but different people have different skills, Maybe some of the people you're going to end up playing with get very good at this. I mean, it is a little bit of a sort of manipulation, dexterity exercise. If you can cut the shoe in half, that might be even more surprising to the casino, right? Because you can count down through half the shoe, or cut 2 decks. Sometimes when you cut a deck, you cut exactly a deck, and you think it's like 53 cards, and they say, sorry, sir, you have to cut at least a deck. And you're like, that is at least a deck. And they're like, no, that's like much less than a deck. And then you say, count it, it's a deck. And then they count it. And then you know exactly how many cards it is. Hopefully if it's over a deck, then. Yeah. Little cards are trickier, and you're best off doing 5s and 6s. Then you can maybe introduce 4s and 7s. And 2s and 3s, 2s, 3s, 9s, you probably never want to do. I mean, maybe after 4s and 7s, you can introduce 3s and 8s. But I would stay away from the 2s and the 9s completely. I've done them all. You can make money doing them all, but only with really high accuracy, and lots of opportunities for error. So, at first, only do the 10s. If you're comfortable with 10s and you have good accuracy, try 5s and 6s as well. But theoretically, any card can be to great advantage if you play it perfectly. Just practically speaking, little cards are harder, and off the little cards, 5s and 6s are the safest. 7s are not. 4, 5, 6, 7 are doable. So let's cut it. There's a 6 at the bottom. So I just cut off about a deck, 6 of diamonds. I don't know, a deck. So 51. Pretend this is small again. 37. Whoa, what's the blackjack? 36. 35, 34, 33, 32. Okay, so let's stop and think for a second. Where do we want it? We probably want to pull one back.
32 and 6 would make it that 15.
And we don't want to go to 18 anymore. We want to go down to 14.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can actually play 6. Let's try playing 6. Now, why do we want to go to 14? Because with 6 hands, 14 will put it in the hole. Right? With 6 hands, 14 will put it in the hole. And it's a little card, so we don't want to bust the deal with it. That's not going to help us anyway. We want to put it in the hole. And unfortunately, to put it in the hole, you have to be right on. You can't be one off. And that's the problem with little cards. So, 18, right? It was 22? I mean, this is 32, so it's 18. So to get it to 14, you got to pull 4 cards. So you look at 1, 2, maybe 3. Yeah, it'll work out. So 17. Now you're thinking. Maybe stop there, right? 16. Maybe stop there. Ooh. 15, 14. And now you've got to stand some of these guys. Unfortunately. Obviously, if you realized it would have been better to stand at 14 than to stand at 12, but you didn't know you were going to pull the 2 cards, so you end up taking some penalties. Again, hopefully they're small enough. Incidentally, that's one of the problems with playing the little cards. You end up taking a lot more penalties than with the 10s. Because you need to get it just right. You can't have it be one off. With the 10s, it could be 17, it could be 18, it could be 19, really. These, it has to sort of be just right. So it's 14 now.
What's the difference whether it's a dealer's whole card or the dealer's no card? Doesn't matter.
A whole card is much nicer because then you know both their cards.
Oh, got it. Okay. Right. That's true. Okay.
It's also much more dangerous because you might not know. You might think it's there, but it's not going to be there.
Right.
The way that you play this is you put the money in the middle, okay? And you need 3 people because you need somebody playing buffers on both sides. And, oops. Interestingly enough. Yeah, see, so this is why it's dangerous, right? Well, how do you think about it? First of all, the first thing you do is you actually look here. And you have these buffers in case it's early, so you don't give it to yourself. Well, it was a 6 of diamonds, so I think it was 3 early and we didn't give it to ourselves. So that's kind of a disaster. But ideally, we're going to be 1 or 2 early, and so you're going to have buffers, so it won't actually hurt you. So if it already comes out, then it's over. If you don't see it here, then you sort of think, is it done here? Well, then you think, aha, I have a 15. Hit it. Hit the 15 no matter what, because if there's a chance that it's the next card, the 21 is so good. 15 into a 21 is such a huge play that even if it's only a 10% chance that it's here and a 90% chance it's here, hit it.
Well, you would double down normally.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't, because see, if it's in the hole, then it's against an 11.
Right.
So you're like, well, is it in the hole? Do I double? In this case, usually the rule of thumb is very simple. If you can make a 21 double, any soft hand and hit any hard hand, no matter what. It depends on the exact probability of it being here versus here. In this case, it already came out. But you might think that this is a different 6 of diamonds. You might think like, there's 6 different 6 of diamonds in the shoe, and You know, 3 off. I don't think I was 3 off. Like, I would definitely double down in this situation. Even though I think this is probably my 6, just in case, I would double this. And it's actually correct to double anyway if it's not in the hole. But even if I thought it's probably in the hole, I would still double it, because the difference between doubling incorrectly against an 11 is a pretty bad play. But it's not. It's like minus 15, 20%, 25%. Doubling correctly against the 5, turning it into 21, is, whatever, it's 140%. It's so much bigger that you just go for it. But the most likely, when you don't have a 15 here, when you don't have something that you can use it on, here's how you play the little cards. You first look at here, you see if it came out. If it came out, you call it off, end of story, I screwed up. If it didn't come out, and in this case you'll probably call it off because it did come out. If it didn't come out, you always hit as much as you can on these hands. You split tens, you hit, because this is nothing. Why do you hit this like crazy? Why do you hit it? You hit this to get information. Because you need, before you play your money hands, you need to know, is it in the hole or is it not in the hole? If it's not here, it might be in the hole, it might be late. So you hit as much as you can so that you know if it comes out. Even if it doesn't come out, then you know it's in the hole. And when you know it's in the hole, you open up chart G, expose whole card basic strategy, and you know how to play. And it's worth a good amount. It might be worth 25% of each one. Sometimes you'll find dealers who are not so sloppy, who are very meticulous, who deal very accurately. They don't show you the back card, but they shuffle very neatly. They're older men, their hands are large, and it's easy for them to shuffle in such a way that the cards fall perfectly together, and they've been dealing for decades. And without meaning to, their shuffles are perfectly interleaved. Okay? This, until very recently, has been completely unpublished as well, but just a few weeks ago, a book that came out on the subject, ACE, sequencing and key carding. That's what we're going to do now. So you find a dealer that shuffles neatly, and then you hope that the shuffle is such that cards don't get stripped and moved around too much, but simply get riffed twice. At least some cards in a shuffle get riffed only twice. And I'll show you how to find places in the shuffle where that happens. Most often it's going to be in the very first round. Now, in a round of 6 hands, half the time you're going to get an ace as one of those 6 hands. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to memorize that ace. In this case, here's the blackjack at the bottom. So the jack of hearts, ace of hearts. Okay? So in my mind, it's a heart hat, because I have a name for each of these cards. There's a chart what the names are. So in this case, you're going to memorize the jack of hearts, ace of hearts, and these 3, 1, 2, 3. Because the cards get picked up the exact same way in every casino in the world. You might have not realized it, but the cards are always picked up after this is played out, and stand, whatever, and you can start memorizing right now. Well, you can't actually, you can start memorizing these guys. Don't memorize this yet, because you don't know what's going to fall on top of it yet. Because you're going to hit that 17 against the 2, right? And that's a stand. So now you can memorize hat, cave, kill. Okay?
How about that's also I have to memorize.
Nothing else. Oh, that. Because see, it's going to get picked up like this. 12, 16, bust. These go up first. And sometimes they get literally picked up last, but they end up on top. And it's like this. And the reason it's always the same way is that if they make a mistake, they need to be able to back the hand out. So they can't vary how they pick up. They can't just go blah. They have to really do it orderly. And they pick them up like this. And so remember, there's a jack of hearts on top of that ace of hearts. So it's the hat in the cave can kill a heart. Hat. And that's the sequence. And the names are in the handout. You can use different names, mnemonics. Once it takes a while to memorize the names. Once you've memorized them, it's much easier to work with names and concepts that you can make a story around and a visual image. And you can keep track of 4 or 5 of the sequences without confusing them by telling a story. I've envisioned the hat in the cave that can kill a heart. I mean, the stories can be written. The romance of the hat in the cave and all that. And that's the sequence. And then you just play normally. You might pick up a few, but there's only a few places in the shuffle where this is probably going to work. And there's only a few shuffles with which it'll work. So maybe you go to Vegas and there's 30 casinos you can play in. You might find 4 casinos where you can do this and 26 where you can't. It's those kinds of odds against you. Very opportunistic game again. But they're usually not the same places where you can do the cuts. So you're more likely to find one or the other. Or the shuffle tracking, which is next. So now we're just going to play and play and play and play and play and play. And it's going to take a long time, so I'm just going to skip ahead. I'm going to skip ahead and pretend we've played this entire shoot. Okay? So now the cut card came out, and so there's some unplayed cards. What do they do with these? Well, it varies a lot from shuffle to shuffle. But most often, these days, they might throw them on top, which is good, which means you can probably pick it up in more places. They might stick them in 3 different places. If they put them at the very bottom, this is not going to be so good for you. But they might usually, most often, they put them in like 3 different places in the middle. Okay? This particular, the place we picked up the sequence assumes that they're not going to put any at the bottom. So the sequence is still on the bottom. And now there's a lot of things that can happen. There's a lot of different kinds of shuffles, and a few of these are beatable with this technique, and a lot of them are not. So I'll show you one of the ones that's not the easiest to beat, but is a very realistic one, a common shuffle that a lot of casinos use, and it's still quite beatable. So we're going to split this in half, and they might flip one of these. Hopefully it's this one. And then they're going to do what's called a progressive pass. There's going to be a 2-pass shuffle. You're going to shuffle everything twice. A 1-pass shuffle you can really beat very effectively, but they're not as common. So we'll do a 2-pass shuffle. So let's say there are going to be 4 picks of 3/4 deck each. Very common situation, okay? And they're just going to do a riff in this case, okay? They could do just a riff, or they could do a riff and a flip, and maybe 2 flips, and that might still be all right. You have to watch it. You have to see where the cards are. In this case, they still end up at the bottom. But then they're going to take half of these, right? Or half of these. And it actually sort of matters which one. But they're going to do it again. So now, sort of the cards that are in the top half are getting progressed up. So if you pick up a sequence right there, you could have kept it and tracked it. But if it's right here, it's going to get shuffled multiple times. So there's a bunch of places where it's safe, but the most obvious place is at the very bottom. Because other places you have to sort of have a very good estimate of how many cards are in a pick. And some dealers do pick a very precise number of cards. Usually guys with very large hands, they're very old, they will pick up the same numbers of cards, and you might be able to pick it up in the middle. But the safest thing to do is to stick to the bottom of the thing. So keep going on this progressive pass. Okay, might pick some of these. So, and also as you can see, I'm a terrible shuffler because I never have worked as a dealer. And you can't do this with someone who went to dealer school last week. This only works with really old dealers who, without meaning to, do the perfect riffs. And they're there. There's a lot of them. In every casino that's not a Mohegan Sun opening day, you're going to find maybe 20-30% of all the dealers fit this characteristic. They're just guys who are very, very accurate without even noticing it. Because what's important is that here, there's a perfect riffle, like this. But, I mean, they're not going to do it like that. They're going to do it very quickly. But I just can't deal that well, so I'm going to set it up. But at the end, it's going to be like this. See? And now, if we're done, it'd be really easy, but probably we're not done. It's going to be a second pass. So hopefully you can see where the thing is. You look for the edge, right? Look for that edge. And now, let's say to pick up the first one, and you know it's not in here. You see? And this is the park place. This is sort of the second pass where they just combine it. And hopefully they leave it like this so you can even see how well they stacked it up. And they leave it like this so the cameras can see that it's not a false shuffle, that it really got riffed. But it helps you because you can see how neat the riff really was. And if it's not that neat, you might not play this out the same way. And of course, if they do a bunch of strips and stuff, then you can do shuffle tracking, but you can't do this ace tracking key card sequencing technique that I'm teaching you right now. So, they're at the bottom of this, right? So once again, we're going to try to do a fairly neat and accurate riff, but not as neat. I'm dropping 2 cards at a time occasionally here, just to be more realistic. And they're still close to the bottom of this, right? Now these will go with this. This will go with this. And now they're going to wait for the floor. And they're going to say, roll them. Right? And they're going to... So this is where you try to... Do you remember where they are? Anybody know where they are? Can you point to them? Yeah. There they are. But that's the last place you're going to cut.
I know.
Right. That's where they are. And you have to kind of memorize the spot with your eyes, because once they roll them, it's going to be harder. The crease is going to be gone. So this is where you really want to have an accurate deck estimate, okay? It's a deck and 3/4 from the bottom. It's right here. So where do you want to cut? You want to cut in front of them. Okay? That's enough. Half a deck in front. Make sure you have the cut card. You know, if you're having trouble getting the cut card when you want it, something's seriously wrong. You got to be controlling the table. You got to be controlling the game. Now, insist on it. So now, pick up another one. It's the first round. Pick up another sequence if you can. But we won't now because it's too confusing.
Ace, okay.
When you're trying to have the cards come out, you want to play the number of cards equal to the number of key cards that you haven't seen yet. You memorize 4 key cards before the ace, so play 4 hands, okay? Uh-oh. Could it be coming already? Hat,
8.
8, cave,
6 is missing.
6, what's 6?
Yes. The 1, 6.
I don't remember any 6s.
6. 5.
Hat, cave, kill, heart.
Yeah, that's right. And the kill is the 5 of clubs, yeah. Yeah. So, could be it, could be a coincidence. How's the spacing? Ace, 1, 2, 3. The spacing is perfect. I thought I cut half a deck before, but yeah, you know, but it's spread into... It was originally 5 cards, plus maybe there was a card over to the round. 5 cards. After the first riff, it's 10 cards. After the second riff, it's 20 cards. And I cut about half a deck in front of it. 20. I actually, you know, I think I was a little too aggressive. I should have cut a whole deck in front of it. You see? Because we're cutting it. We almost cut off the top. Okay? So, I stand corrected. With 2 riffs, cut a full deck in front of it to be safe. So you don't cut it off. So it may be coming right away. Usually you play for a while and then it starts coming. Hat, cave, kill. 5 of clubs. Well, so keep in mind that there may be a 5 of clubs coming pretty soon. 9. Ooh, 14. 19. 11. Do you even want to double down? Well, it's not on the hole, so yeah, still. 17. 18. Well, what's happening here? The next card's probably going to be a Jack of Hearts, right? Jack of Hearts, 1, 2, 3, Ace of Hearts. If you can play 6 spots, I would go for it. And I would try to put 2 money hands out, one for the Jack and one for the Ace. So I might do like just 1 money hand for the Jack. I mean, you know, if it's right on, they'll get it. If it's 1 off, it won't. But 1, 2, and then money, money, money for the Ace. See what I mean? This has the risk that if it's a little late, it'll go to the dealer. But it's probably still worth going for. Ideally, you pull a bunch of cards out and you put the expect Ace here. But here you have the nice possibility of catching 2, the 10 and the Ace. And if it's 1 off in each direction, you'll get it. If there's a 7th spot, you definitely put out a buffer or something. But if there's not, you know, I'd still go for it. understanding that it may go to the dealer. There's a decent chance that you're going to lose a bunch of expectation, but you win more than you lose, and I think you still have to go for it. Uh-oh. That's the way it goes. But that's the technique. So as you can see, I went for the very aggressive opportunity to catch both. I ended up catching neither. In fact, this went on the buffer and this went to the dealer. So that's not good. But that's how it works. So generally, you want to pull the last key card out. And in fact, the safe thing to do, the conservative thing to do, if you haven't seen the last key card, is to play one hand and try to pull the last key card out in one hand, so that you never have this kind of risky situation, and you're always putting the money out on this side. Okay. So
it's like playing 6 by one hand.
play one, pull this jack,
And then play 2 or 3.
and then know that the ace is going to come early, and never risk giving it to the dealer. Have 3 money hands here and 3 buffer hands here, and never go to the dealer. That's the conservative approach. It's probably better, but sometimes you try to get a little aggressive. But it's hard here because it depends on the accuracy of the riff. Now with the cut, you control the accuracy. Here, you just have to watch the dealer. And sometimes the dealers are just absolutely perfect riffing machines, and you know that it's going to work out. You want to have the ace be in a place within a shoe that's trackable. The bottom is, depending on the shuffle, it could be the bottom, it could be the last round. If they put those unplays at the bottom, the last round could be very nice. Okay? Sometimes it's in the middle, and then you have to know where in the middle. It's much harder.
Yeah, we think it's still more difficult. Right?
It's difficult. It's very difficult, but it's doable. Last major technique, I guess class of techniques, is shuffle tracking. Well, what we call NRS. I mean, the ace tracking is a type of shuffle tracking as well. It's keycard sequencing, shuffle tracking. But what we call NRS, non-random shuffle techniques, is just basic shuffle tracking, where you try to keep track of regions with counts in them, and you try to see how the regions, the packets interact. So you can do 2 basic kinds of NRS, which is positive and negative. And there's a number of shuffles on which they might work. Most shuffles, you can do some kind of NRS. It's hard to design a human shuffle that's completely impossible to shuffle track. The machines, of course, are much harder. And with the machines, you have to really understand how a particular machine works. And I personally haven't been able to do that. I haven't done that. I know some people have in the past. But you beat a machine and then they change the machine a little bit, and it's hard again. So let's just do a little bit of basic counting again. So let's put out small bets and see if you guys still remember how to count. So it's plus 3, 13, 2. Let's stack this up a little bit. Three, 4, 5, that's a double, 6, 7, 21, 8, 7. For good NRS, you kind of want it to climb faster than that. But it's something. We can start with the weak one. See, these things are powerful when you have large count swings in particular parts of the shoe. So the times you're really tempted to do it is when you get like a plus 15 or minus 12 or something. Here you have a plus 7 in the first half a deck, I want to say.
Plus 7, right?
Plus 7 in the first half a deck. So note that. With chips or whatever, like, note that the first half a deck is plus 7, and then watch another round, see what happens. Aha, it's going up a little higher. 8, 9, 10. Let me just go up a little higher. Um, 11, 12, 13. I mean, it's 12. So 12 in the first 3/4 deck. Okay? And that's what you mark. And now see what happens next. If it goes, let's say you really want to mark 3/4 deck, but the very next round keeps going up, well, that's good. It's good to keep track of several places. So I would note that it was 7 at half a deck, and then it went to 12 at 3/4, and then it's going even higher. Notice that it's going up again. Okay? You don't have to write down 17. I mean, you're not writing anything down. You're memorizing it. So just keep in mind that it didn't just drop right back down. If it dropped right back down, if these are old pictures, and you're trying to do exactly 3/4, it's risky because it's the edge, and you might be a little off from where you think you are. But this is nice because you know that not only is it 12, but it's going up. Okay? And now you play the rest of the shoe normally. So you're really going for the 3/4. Because the amount that you're trying to mark has to do with how big the picks are. 3/4 is a very typical pick size. It's more common than either half or a 1. So we're going to do the same type of shuffle. There at the bottom of here, right? Whatever. This and this, this and that, this and that, this and that, this and that. And I picked 3/4 decks because most often it's a very common amount. You split into 2 3-deck chunks, and then there are 4 3/4 deck picks from each one. And if the picks are 1 deck or half a deck, you have to mark accordingly. I mean, you don't just mark 3/4 decks. First, you watch the shuffle. Before you do any of this stuff, you watch the shuffle and you go upstairs or to your car and you do the shuffle. You got to be able to do the exact same shuffle that dealers do.
You have to match the deck.
Yeah, you have to replicate the shuffle. You have to personally shuffle the cards just like the dealer. And then you go watch the dealer some more. Unless you can first personally shuffle the same way, you can't even watch the shuffle properly because there's too many things to look at. When you learn the shuffle, now you can start watching the details. You see? And then you think about what kind of technique you can do on it. And then when you're doing a technique, you watch the shuffle again and you think of where your cards are and make sure he doesn't do something different. So now, the nice thing about this is that a lot more shuffles are susceptible to it because now they can do strips. They can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can do like 20 different rips here. And the NRS is just as good. It's 3/4 deck going into a deck and a half. This deck and a half is going to have your cards no matter what they do. Problem is that now, when they split it, this deck and a half is going to be combined into 3 whole decks. You see? Because this is going to, first these 2 get combined, and these 2 get combined. Basically, you're going to have this chunk of the shoe with your cards, and this without. And that's all you know, unfortunately. Your packet went into half a shoe. It's plus 12. These are positive cards. These are bad cards. These are 5s and 6s. Before you decide how to cut, where are the cards? Visualize the cards. They're the top half, right? It's not enough to think that it's plus 12. You can make a mistake. You can make a very costly mistake by doing the wrong thing. What you should do to be safe is to imagine the little tiny cards, the 5s and the 6s, in here, in the top. Like, see them right here. Do you want to play them? You don't want to play them. So don't cut it to yourself, meaning cut behind them.
You have to cut out.
Cut behind them, cut the rest of the cards in, and now they're back here. So some are behind the cut card, and the rest of them are here. Cut card goes here, right? Let's play this out. How do we play? What's the count? The running count is plus 12. Why? Because there are 12... Remember those 12 cards we just visualized? They're back here somewhere, right?
And they're not going to be played from.
How many decks is it? It's 3/4 of a deck.
Right.
So pretend that those little cards, that section that counted to plus 12, that's spread out somewhere in these 3, right? It's mixed in with all the bunch of cards, but mentally separate it out. And mentally take these cards, this exact 3/4 deck that's mixed in with the 3 decks, that's plus 12, that you counted already once. Separate it out mentally and put it over here. Pretend it's here. It's the same thing. You know that it's somewhere back here. So just pretend it's right here. And pretend that right now the running is plus 12, and there's 5¼ decks left. There's about 5 decks left. You've already counted 3/4 of a deck. It's out of play. So it's just 12 divided by 5 and change. So you're starting with a true of plus 2.5.
Because you put all the small ones.
Because it's like you counted them. It's like these cards are going to have extra 10s and aces because there's extra 12 in there.
Right.
And that's how you play it. You start with 12 and you bet. 12 over 5¼ is 2.3 or something. It's not as powerful as ace striking. It's not as powerful as cuts. Okay, but it's at least twice as powerful as basic counting. If the count drops, we can maybe do another NRS, the opposite kind of NRS. In other words, we can keep doing it, continuous. We probably don't want to play this many hands, particularly. Let's play 4. Well, I guess there's 5 of you, so we can play 5. So just count from 12. 12, 10 on the blackjack. So it's still 10. Okay. 9. 8, 7, 8, 7. But now it's 7. So you can still 7 over 5. You can still maybe bet a little bit. Depending on what the minimum is, you might still bet more. Half a unit, it might still be more than the minimum. It might not be. So let's just play these 5 hands. So now it's 10. Going down. 19, 12. 12. Too many. So now it's 10, I believe. Can you mark anything for the next one? It's -2. Because it went from 12 to 10, so it's -2. So it's not big enough to mark. But if it changed radically in either direction, you would mark it again and do this for next time. Okay? And you can mark the top, you can mark the last round. Sometimes you can mark the unplayed cards if they keep them all together. You can mark all kinds of places. Watch the shuffle, figure out what you can mark. So 10, but now you keep playing, you keep betting. You're betting it up. 10 over 4.5 now, maybe. Over a unit. Now it's 6. 7, 8, 7. Everybody loses except for this guy pushing. If you know there's a number for doubling down, and it's high enough, you might double down. And if they're watching you from the beginning of the show, now they think you're making a mistake, even if they're counting. Right? So it's 7. So as you can see, it's come down a little bit and bouncing around, as you might expect it to. The most important thing about playing any kind of NRS shuffle tracking is that the count doesn't go the wrong way. Sometimes it won't come out. What do you want it to do? It started at 12. What are you hoping for after 3 decks? You're hoping for it to go to 0. For 12 cards to come out. It won't always go to 0 because there's random cards in there. Sometimes it'll stay around 12. Sometimes it'll go up to 13 or 14. Much more often it'll go down to 7 or 8. But it's almost never going to go to 25. It's almost never going to radically go in the wrong direction. Maybe 1 out of 10 times it will, 1 out of 15 times. But if 2 or 3 times in a row it goes the wrong way, you're almost certainly doing the opposite of what you think. You're cutting in the opposite place, or you're flipping the sign or something. So it's a kind of a quick feedback mechanism. Regardless, don't look at whether you won or lost money on the rest. Look at what happened to the count. If the count drops 3/4 of the time, which it will if you're doing it right, even though your results was a win aren't statistical yet because you haven't played 10,000 hands. Even after like 5 attempts at this, another advantage of doing NRS over regular counting, you know it's working because it's something predictable is happening. The count is falling almost all the time. 70-80% of the time, that 12 is going to end up at like 10 or less or 8 or less. It's going to really noticeably, it can't be like every other time it's 15, every other time it's 10. It's really going to noticeably, very quickly, within 1 day of doing it, you'll see that the count is almost always dropping. And you know that you've made money if the count dropped, because the tens came out. It's better than having a high count and betting it up, and maybe the cards are behind a cut card, maybe they come out. Here, they'll usually come out. We're approaching the end. We want to make sure that we stay inside the packet. If you play this many hands, your hands are in the packet, but the dealer's head cards might be outside the packet. So the count is 9 for you, but it's -3 for the dealer's head cards. So that's why you want to maybe just do one more round. And, well, it didn't come down, but it came down a little, right? 15, 14, 10. Plus. So it's still 9. So, well, we started with 12, it's 9. 3 came out. That's pretty normal. And now this time you might want to just cut back. You have to decrement. Meaning you started with 12, now it's over. Now there's no more trick. Because now the best predictor of what's left is simply what's here. You see? So now the count is no longer 9. It's going directly to -3. You decrement. You subtract the 12 that you started with, you got to subtract it back out. And now you just divide by 3 again. You lose that extra thing too. It's over. Usually you want to leave with a true -1 or so. If you have a true -1, it's time to go. So right now it's only minus running 1, so I might stick around a little more. -3, etc. So nothing too exciting happened, but we played it out. And we might still not actually be totally out of it. It might still come out a little bit more is what I'm looking for here. But even if it doesn't, it's like I said, it doesn't always come all the way down. But it's almost always going to come down somewhat. Okay. It's a weak NRS. It's not, you mixed only 3/4 with 2 1/4 decks of random cards. So of course there's going to be a large random factor. But even with a random factor, it's rarely going to go up very much. Because, inserting 3/4 of a deck, a +12, into an otherwise random 2 1/4, biases it very strongly towards being a negative thing overall. That's a positive NRS. It's the safer of the 2 types of NRS. Easier to play, less valuable. It's always the things that are easier to play and safer that are less valuable. The other kind of NRS is a negative NRS, and it's a little trickier, but potentially a little bit more valuable. So it's going to go negative now. -3, -2, -3. -5, -7, -8, -9, -10. -15, -14, -13. So that's about half a deck. That's actually a third of a deck.
-13 is half a deck.
It's less than, one more round is going to be half a deck. So still -13. Oops. -14, -13. -14. -15, 16, -14. -13. So -13 all around from a third to 3/4. It's a very constant -13. And it's nice to know, because sometimes the picks, you think it's going to be a half a deck, but it's going to be different. So it's nice to have that extra information, and you can watch the pick, and you know it's okay no matter what. So really, when you mark it, get a sense of how it's changing around that area. Not enough to it's not like, I marked -10, that's what it is. It's not like that. It's remember that it went up and then down and up again or something. And then watch the shuffle and ask yourself, what could it really be? It's more error prone. It's harder to do it accurately. You have to watch the cards very closely. because instead of cutting something out, you're cutting it in, meaning you have to know where it starts and where it ends more exactly. So, but on the other hand, we can do it with a one-pass shuffle, just for fun. So we'll do one deck sections here. One deck sections, and then half deck picks, and combine them arbitrarily. But they might do a lot of riffing and stuff. See, this is where you guys have to just absolutely watch the shuffle very, very closely. Okay? And you have to have the same estimate skills as with doing a cut. You just need to know how many cards this is and how many cards this is. You just have to know that this is in fact like 50, 48 or whatever, 50. Because the cards are there, okay? And unlike with a positive, you just kind of cut the whole thing out, and you can err. Here, you need to know where they start and where they end, very, very exactly. And they're gonna make them even. Okay. So it's a very tricky game in that respect. So, where do you cut?
Inside the game, right?
No. Next. Yeah. It's right here. This is where it is. It's easy to make a mistake. You have to, you look away for 1 second and you don't know which one it is. So this is like very, very close. Maybe you cut a couple of cards too much. I don't know. I mean, it was just, this is exactly what I thought it was, so I would cut a little bit less than this. Right? You don't want to cut it away. It's such a small packet. The whole thing is only a deck. So you don't want to lose any of it. This deck has half of what went into this deck. Half a deck here is minus 13. So, what about the other half a deck? Do you guys have anything to say about... So, this deck consists of minus 13 that we tracked, and another half a deck that I got shuffled with. What could you say about the other half a deck?
Plus 13.
Well, yes and no. Do you expect 13 little cards in there? You can imagine 13 tens and aces are in here because we counted them. But are there 13 little cards in there? No. How many little cards are in there? How many extra little cards are in there? The half a deck that got picked was from the other 5.5 decks. You had 13 cards here, half a deck with minus 13, and you had 5.5 decks with plus 13. What's the true count in that 5.5 deck chunk? It's basically 13 divided by 5.5. So it's like per deck, okay, per deck during a 5.5 deck chunks, it's about 2.5 extra little cards. But we took a half deck section out of that. So it's only about 1.25 extra little card. So in this case, it's a very nice NRS because the 13 only really turns into a 12. We'll call it an 11. Because you really want to round up here. Call it 11. Because it was very powerful because it was just only half a deck and only one pass. Most shuffles, 2 passes would have made this half a deck go into 2 decks instead of into 1 deck. And now there's a deck and a half of random cards. So now about a quarter of the 5.5 deck chunk. So a quarter of 13. So you're going to get like 4 cards that are positive mixed into. So if this was the 2 decks, it would have now been immediately going to 9 instead of 13. Now it goes to 11, but with 2 decks it would have gone into 9. So this is about 11. Theoretically, you divide by 1. That's a true of 11. I wouldn't play it like that. It's just too aggressive. But keep in mind that theoretically you should bet about 10 units. It's a much more powerful technique. You know, it's not quite doing cuts. It's not like a 50% edge, but 10 units is like a 5% edge, which is large. So I would just start at 11. Start at 11, and remember that you started at 11. And what do you have to do after 1 deck? Remember, you have to decrement. If you forget to decrement after 1 deck, you're going to be playing a minus 11 as though it was 0. You're going to be playing 0. You're going to be playing badly.
So what's the true count now?
It's about 10.
Because of the...
Because you really are about 11 extra cards, approximately, inside this one deck chunk. But it's not exactly a deck, right? I mean, it's not. None of this is precise. The picks aren't exactly half a deck. Okay, could easily be a deck and a half. So that would make it 11 over 1 and a half. It's like 7 instead of 11, right? So maybe only 6 units instead of 10. So, if you bet like 5 units, you'd be pretty safe. Bet less. Bet significantly less than the fair. Especially as you're learning this thing until you're very good at it. With a negative and a rest, again, if it shoots up during this deck, well, you've maybe 1 out of 20 times, but if it shoots up like every other time, you've really screwed up. It's supposed to drop. And you'll know after on the deck. So let's try it. Let's bet like $500. See what happens. Still 11. 10. 9. 9 and 19 is good. 10, 9, 8. See? Good things happen when you play negative and rest. So maybe cut back a little, bet 4 units. Still 8. Surrender. 7, 8, 9. You won again. Insurance?
What's the true count now?
Well, first of all, it's 6. It's not 9.
No, I was going down.
Oh, you're going down, yeah. So it's now 6. 6. What is the true count? Well, it's at, what do you divide by right now? You'd be very comfortable dividing by a deck. You could maybe divide by a little under, like 0.8 deck. So you could say the true is 7. Call it 6. Call it 6. It's definitely insurable. Take insurance. Ta-da, you win insurance. So you win every bet here so far. It's 5. You're not always going to win, but you're going to win quite often on this kind of play. Because when it comes down that hard, that's a significant, 5% difference is noticeable pretty quickly. Well, but you can go easily a few months on losing trips doing this kind of play. Not noticeable like within a weekend, but quicker than basic counting. So what did they say? It was 5? So it's now 4. It's 4. It's coming down. So you surrender that. 12, 13, it's 4, too many. 2. Well, now you kind of, you could put a little bit out now, but now you're splitting hairs. Don't split hairs. If the count is 2, and there it is. Now it's -1. Now it all came out. Surrender, -2. Now you're done. Now you leave. You go home. Except, what just happened? From 13 to -2. Mark it again. Do it again. The nice thing about negative and the rest is you can do it again, and again, and again. It's -2 now, so what do you do? Well, you probably stay because you want to do this again. It's nothing else. So bet one-handed minimum and just play it out. -4, -5. -4, -5. So maybe do one more round. -4, -5, -4. So now it's no longer -4, it's -17 because you subtract that 13 again. So it would be terrible if you play this as -4 because it might just randomly go up to +3 and you start betting, but it's actually -17. So you're done with this shoot. The only way you're going to play is just to do this again. Hopefully someone else can play and you can just watch. That was a very successful negative NRS because it really just came out with 1 money with pretty good probability.